Hello, everyone. It is Thursday. I'm so excited to be talking to you guys. We finished up a really intense educational series. It was all about the generations. We talked about millennials, baby boomers, all of the generations and how it affects culture. But this series or this topic today is really going to be something special. I have a special guest for you guys. His name is Will Kruer, and he is a part of an amazing company called PEOPLEfirst Talent and Retention Consulting. And his specialization is recruiting. I don't want to steal his shine. We're going to bring him up in a little bit to talk about what he specializes in his company. But if this is your first time watching our live, again, my name is Miracle Semien. I'm the COO of Veaux Professional Services, and we like to call ourselves conscious HR, the modern HR, and everything we do is we lead with culture. So we help you with process and practices, but we're going to start with their culture because it is so important. But it's not about me. Let's go ahead and bring Will to the stage. Yay!
Hello.
I
Hi.
know, I mean,
Thank you,
like,
Miracle.
so we have Will. Okay, I'm gonna say my little story of how I even met Will. So I was up at 2 o'clock in the morning, which is very common for entrepreneurs or people running a business. And I was like, you know what? I need to start connecting or partnering with people who are like-minded and doing the same thing. So I literally just did a search and I was like culture, and Will's videos popped up, and I'm like 2 o'clock in the morning watching his videos like, you are right, you are right. And then we connected and we had a couple of conversations. And if you get to be a part, like, we are so passionate about culture. So I definitely wanted to get him on. And so we can have a little bit of, you can see an insight to our conversations when we're talking about cultures. They're like, we wish companies would do more of this. But that is our story and how we connected. So I'm excited to have him today. But go ahead and let the people know a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Miracle. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I do remember getting your LinkedIn request. And coming from a recruiting background, I'm always open to opportunity. Recruiters always preach that to their network. And so when I got your LinkedIn request, I used my sources and gave you a call because I
Mhm.
saw culture all over your page. And I love when people lead with culture because in our industry of HR and recruiting and retention and all that, using the foundation of culture is really what's going to resonate long term with your business. And so I think a lot of businesses have good cultures, and they have a culture of their own, but they're lacking the tools to use it as a strategic plan and implement it with some of their HR processes, implementing it with practical recruiting, successful recruiting, having that bleed through into your onboarding, and then of course using it as a retention strategy. I think a lot of people just read articles about culture and try different things instead of having an intentional plan, which is why we're really passionate about using it as a tool in your business. So yeah, I really appreciate you having me to kind of talk more about that.
Yeah. I don't know. Let's go ahead and talk about what your company does and kind of a background. I would love to know how it started.
Yeah, so I'm partner and COO with People First. We're talent and retention consulting, and so I had my own recruiting firm where I kind of fell into recruiting. I have a finance background, and I went to meet with a recruiter. I applied to a job, for finance early in my career. Went to
Mhm.
meet with a recruiter, and they were like, you would be good at recruiting, and I was young, so I was kind of open to hearing what they had to say, and it sounded like a good gig. So I got into recruiting with a large firm and, just kind of found my knack within it and was really good at it. And so then went on to start my own firm. And I met my partner, Alex, who does more hiring infrastructure, helping
Mhm.
companies internally with building up their hiring practices to be efficient for, when you go through large stages of growth or, if you're someone who wants to build up your own resources to be able to continually grow efficiently. And so that really resonated with me because, I think recruiting is good for if you have a niche need or a time sensitive need. But a lot of companies rely on recruiters, as their talent acquisition process. And, that can be really expensive. Recruiting fees paying per employee instead of, building something yourself can be really expensive. And then it doesn't really like resonate or, impact the organization. So when I met my partner, Alex, I was like, this is really where we should be partnering and, kind of providing both resources. So, and then, her and I had met our other partner, Melanie, who is very focused on culture. Melanie has a 20-year background in HR and identified how a lot of companies were lacking that piece of culture, and how that can be used within their HR processes. So the three of us, each of us had our own businesses, and the three of us merged together with PEOPLEfirst to kind of combine each of our backgrounds. And, we all kind of do the same thing, but we all have our own specialties where we really lean in and rely heavily on. And we've built a team to help, service our clients. And, we have an amazing team behind us that, we like to implement our own cultural practices with. And so, our mission is really to solve the people problem for small and medium-sized businesses. And we do that through recruiting and onboarding and retention and HR processes. And we view everything through the lens of culture, because that's really what's going to have the greatest impact on a lot of your processes.
I love it. So my first question, I want to dive into it because I think it's so important to have these conversations, because we are truly changing the mindset of leaders, CEOs, and of companies, because sometimes, well, not sometimes, a lot of times they view HR as, oh, it's just this department. I'm not big enough. I don't need all of that. All of these misconceptions, because they're taking a viewpoint of when they were in the corporate world and they really didn't have that interaction with HR. So specifically when it comes to recruiting, what is your viewpoint between recruiting and then staffing? And why is even having the conversation of culture even important? Like, how, if I'm a CEO and I'm like, I don't need all of that, tell me why it is important and recruiting and staffing is different, if it is different in your opinion.
Well, I think, staffing, if you're referring to the industries, a staffing agency is, kind of a short-term fix. And of course, like recruiting is finding, permanent employees that are going to contribute and build your business. And so, I think it's so important to integrate culture into that, because a lot of people are hiring on their gut, right? They might have, some good interview questions that they've amassed over the years, but for the most part, they're making those decisions based on maybe personality tests or, a feel that they get when they're with that candidate, instead of really having like a defined process and an intention around, who you're going to be hiring that's going to be a culture add, and who you're going to be hiring that is going to work well within your team. Because typically, your teams are going to have a different culture than the overall organization. But all of it needs to be, synergetic, and you have to work, different teams have to work collaboratively across other departments. And so really having an intention behind the types of questions you're asking in order to get, in order to understand the true answer from the candidate, and being able to, back that up with an unbiased approach is really the best way to hire with intention, and kind of eliminate hiring on your gut. Because I hear a lot of people complain about, well, the candidate told me this in the interview, and that wasn't true, and they only lasted 6 months, they only lasted 12 months. And, a lot of that might be true, that the candidate misrepresented them. But you also, kind of the burden is on the interviewer to really create an atmosphere and create a conversation to where the candidate's going to be sharing the true answers. Or it's also on the burden of the interview to identify when, a candidate might say the right thing, but the content behind it might not be a fit for your particular organization or for that role. And, in this market, it's so hard to find good people. And so a lot of interviewers will kind of overlook, some of those red flags because they have enough of the content, but not, not all of it. And so, I think it's just so important to use those cultural foundations to really have an impact on successful recruiting that's going to be hiring people that are going to be retained.
So are you saying that one or multiple mistakes that leaders are making is they're probably like Googling what questions to ask.
Yes. Oh
Um,
my gosh,
if
that's
you,
so funny.
you're like,
Yes.
"Yes." What would you say is the best way to form an interview question to get a true answer from the candidate? Like one of the biggest questions is tell me your weakness. And I'm gonna
Yeah.
I, am too detail oriented. So sometimes I just do it on my own instead, like, the
Right.
answer. So, what tip would you give leaders out there to ask the right question or even try to find the right way to ask a question?
Yeah. That's a great question. And I could talk, I'll try to be as concise as possible because I could talk all day about interviewing because, I talk to business leaders all the time and they all say that, that they are able to interview. And I think that interviewing is something that, you have to do it, but it's
Mhm.
not something that you're doing every day. And so
Yeah.
therefore it's probably not going to be your strongest skill.
Mm.
And that's okay. That's why you seek outside help or you seek coaching or, seek other resources to help refine that skill so it's impactful because how you hire is really going to impact your business. But to answer your question about interview questions, if I were to Google search, workout routines or exercises, and then I went to the gym and I just kind of fumbled through different exercises that I found, it's a good starting point and it's a good way to get me in the right mindset. But a lot of that stuff isn't gonna explain the right form. It's not gonna coach me on my form because it can't see me,
Mhm.
and it's not gonna tell me like the right cadence of how many reps should I do this day versus another day, and what exercises should I do in what order to get the best result. So it's a good Google searching interview questions is a good place to start to get some
Mhm.
ideas going. But you really have to dig deeper into the candidate persona,
Mhm.
meaning the type of target candidate that you're going to be interviewing. Who is this person? Where are they coming from? What motivates them? Why do they want this job? Why would they do well in this job? And dig in really deep to craft some thoughtful interview questions about getting some of the answers that you need to know for your business. So, leaving them be open-ended, leaving them be like very situational and
Mhm.
have, situations to reference from your own role is a much better route to take than, asking about weaknesses because you can understand weaknesses through asking situational questions on what someone has done, in the past because past behaviors, predict future behaviors. So, kind of focusing on that situational stuff, leaving things open-ended, and then, really taking some time to really think about your atmosphere because you want this person to be comfortable. You
Okay.
want them to be sharing, you want this to be a conversational flow. So you don't want some, HR question, answer, oh, thanks for your answer. And then next HR question, right? You want to be like a very conversational. When they give you an answer, you want to comment on it. Like, okay, that's really interesting that you did this. What we see in our business is, and then give them some feedback about how that applies to this business and this role. So that way you're not spoon feeding the candidate before the question, right? They've
Mhm.
already answered. So now you can give them some feedback about, how that resonates within your organization or how that differs from your organization. And then that way they start to understand your organization.
Mhm.
Because in my opinion, something that I see in every interview is that, the last 5 minutes, the interviewer says, do you have any questions for us? And the candidate has 5 minutes to ask questions, and then the candidate's not going to have good questions,
Yeah.
because their questions are going to be very, pre-rehearsed or, pre-thought. It's going to be like, well, what's the day in the life look like? It's all going to be kind of rushed. Whereas if you give them feedback after every answer that they have, not only does it answer a lot of their questions, but give them a clear picture of your business and of your organization and of the role, but it also kind of helps them, understand what the expectations are. It helps. It makes them more comfortable. It feels like more of a conversation, and so therefore they're going to start to share a little more. They give you an answer, you give them some feedback, and then they're going to give you some feedback on what you just said, which is going to share more. And that's really how you dig in and get the true answers out of some of these people, and really start to identify, like, can this person do the job in this organization based on what they just said.
You upset a lot of people by saying that. Because I have a script and I have my list of questions, and the last one says, "Do you have any questions?" So I'm sure that messed up a
Well,
lot
that's a
of
good.
people listening to this.
Yeah, no, you can still ask that. You can still ask that at the end, obviously, but it shouldn't be what you're relying on. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
They always it's like, well, we have 5 minutes left. I want to be respectful of your time. Do you have any questions? And they're like, wait, what?
Yep,
I
exactly.
love that, having that conversation throughout the organization and really making them feel comfortable and trusted, and then so you can pick up on those red flags, exactly what you're saying. Because if you're going through the list, we know the next question is, the first question is, tell me about yourself. The next
Yeah.
one is what's your strengths and weaknesses. um Tell me about a time where you had to deal with a difficult person. Like these, I said the first five top interview questions, like if you Google. So they
That's
already
so
know
funny.
what we are going to ask, and they come prepared. I always like to ask different questions, like if you could be doing anything and money wasn't an issue for you, what would you be doing, just to try to get a little bit of their personality. And then I also like to ask this question: you are going on a trip, and what's like the first thing you'll do? And so I'm trying to
Yeah.
listen to see if they're like, I'm taking my best friend and we're just gonna like YOLO, we're just gonna sleep all day and have a good time. Or some people will be like, I have to plan everything. Like I need to go research what city I'm staying in. I need to already have my agenda. That is me.
Yep.
I am that type of person. Or they're like, it would freak me out. I have so much to do. So trying to asking them those subtle questions to see a little bit of their personality and how they approach things. I always like to ask people, I just want to see how you would approach this. Imagine you're thinking about it, but you're thinking out loud. I want to see how your mind is processing this thing. So that was a good point. I want to talk
Yeah.
about what challenges do you see the most? So, and it could be twofold, like just generic, what challenges are you seeing today in the climate? I know you mentioned it earlier that finding talent is hard to find. So, what are some biggest challenges that you see happening now when it comes to recruiting?
Yeah, absolutely. But I do want to comment on your
Oh,
comment about the "tell me about yourself" question. You may, when you clicked on my LinkedIn profile, you probably saw my video about why that's just such a terrible question to ask, a candidate right off the
no.
bat, because they're gonna kind of ramble a little bit,
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
and a
yeah.
lot of the information that they share with you is not going to be relevant, to the role or to hiring. And so, when I talk about creating a good situation and good atmosphere, there are other ways for someone to tell them about themselves, than just asking that, because it's such a broad question that they're going to reply with a broad answer. Whereas if you have kind of like micro defined questions, to kind of kick things off, it generally gets into a better flow. So yeah,
I
I just love your content around questions. That was funny, and I had to comment
I
on it.
remember the first time somebody asked me, so tell me about yourself. And I was young and I'm like, well, I'm from Houston, I
Yeah.
live in South. They don't care about that.
Well,
It,
it's too broad. When somebody hears a broad question, they're going to respond in broad terms. So you want to help the candidate, and you want to
Mhm.
be efficient with your time in the interview. So
Yeah. That's such a
yeah,
crazy question. It's just like, I think I probably said like, my parents are Charlotte and Kurt. Like I was so young.
yeah,
Know how to answer that. I was
that's
like,
funny.
yeah. But
Yeah. So, but yeah, to answer the challenges in the workplace now, or in the climate now,
mhm.
is definitely finding qualified candidates. So what we see a lot is people, people complain about, nobody wants to work. And I definitely agree that there are some cultural shifts
Yeah.
in our culture, and there are some shifts in expectations and entitlement and things like that. And I think that that's always been relevant. When you look back over history over the past 200 years, that's always been relevant, that each generation is different, and the generation before them doesn't quite know how to process it. So I think there is some relevance to that, but I think the bigger issue is that there are tons of people applying to jobs. There are tons of people who want to work, and there are tons of people who have a good attitude and can be a culture add to your organization. But finding the ones that are qualified is where the real difficulty lies. And so, in order to combat that problem, it's really building up your infrastructure, because a lot of organizations, like I kind of said in the beginning, are relying on a recruiter fee to find them an employee, and that recruiter fee only goes for that one employee. And if that it doesn't apply to a whole role or to a whole organization or to a whole team, it's just that one employee. And so that having a better process behind how you find that one person will really bleed into the operations and efficiency of your organization. And so that's things like starting with what your candidate persona is, really narrowing down who is the person that you're trying to hire, and then answering the question of, are you your type's type? So would that person want to work for you? Would they want to work in your organization? And if they would, then great. You don't have to make any adjustments. But if they wouldn't, you either need to adjust who you're hiring, who you're targeting, or you need to adjust internally your culture and your organization. So once you have that defined, then it's developing that process around that. So developing how you're marketing to these candidates. A lot of people, they have an open job and they throw up a job posting, and they're like, we can't find anyone. Well, yeah, of course not. Like, making a job change is a huge decision in someone's life. And so you're banking on, just the universe having perfect timing, that this person's going to apply to your job the same week that you post it. They're going to be perfect. They're going to be a culture add. They're going to be qualified. They're going to have a great attitude. They're going to have all this management experience. They're going to have, 10 years of technical experience. They're going to use the same systems as you. They like, this person is going to apply to your job in 2 days. Yeah. So really developing a process around having a warm candidate pipeline. And there are a lot of things that go into a warm candidate pipeline. Kind of previous postings, different marketing efforts, brand exposure, candidates knowing who you are so that when you do post the job, they want to apply to it, so that you can capture that passive candidate crowd, going to the types of events that your target candidates at. People sponsor events, people attend events, but are you sponsoring and attending the events that your target employees, future employees, are going to be at? Or are you basing that all off of where your target clients are? You know what I mean? It's like you need to really integrate some of your recruiting and job search efforts into your holistic business operations. So that's really, it's all about setting the processes internally to be able to be received externally by the candidate market, because it is very tight out there. It's very tough to find that qualified person.
And I am in situations where candidates are posting on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn has a daily rate, and so they're posting for like 5 days. So what you're saying, you have to have that right candidate looking within this small window when you post, because we don't want to go over our budget. We don't want to get charged too much. So
yeah. It would be like, if you're in business development, or if you're a business owner where, you're charged with obtaining new clients, you would never expect to, send a prospect a marketing flyer and then have them call you and say, hey, we want to work with you. That's they have to get to know you. They have to understand who you are. And there's a lot of work that goes in behind that. It's, it's more than just reaching out to people and telling them who you are. It's really about, brand identity, having a unified LinkedIn strategy across all of your employees, attending the right events, being in the right places, and being perceived, the way that, you are internally, because your internal stuff, how you treat your vendors, how you treat your clients, all that stuff, people know about, and that becomes, your brand and your understanding in the marketplace. So And all those things will contribute to getting that warm candidate pipeline. So, and I
I
could talk all day about that.
that candidate pipeline. When you're talking, I was just thinking about leaders and CEOs that may be watching this, and it resonated when you're like, do they even want to work? Like, are you a company that they would want to work for? And I'm like, ooh, as a CEO, you have to answer or ask yourself those tough questions like, would somebody even want to work here? That part.
Right. Yep. Because it's all about, so because the other shift that we've seen is, post COVID. So pre-COVID, candidates were making moves for better opportunity, better job title, benefits, salary. And they're still considering all those things. Those are all very, very important. You have to have the right, systems in place for that. But post-COVID, what we're really seeing is that candidates are defining their job search by searching for a better culture. And that's what a lot of them say. When I'm, as a recruiter, I talk to them and they're like, I want a better culture. Well, the thing is that everybody defines better differently. Everybody defines good differently.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know a single business. If I were to call them, how's your company culture? I don't know a single business that would say it's bad. They all say we have a great culture. Well, you have a great culture for a very specific group of people.
Yeah.
And you can either, be intentional about kind of, feeding into that and making that as good as it can be for that group of people. You can be intentional about opening up what that good culture is to different groups of people. You can do all these things around that, but it's really about like, the person that you want to come work for you, do they view your culture the same way? Do they think it's a good culture? And, if they don't, then a lot of adjustments need to be made.
And that takes a lot of self-awareness for leaders to actually define. Because when I'm having conversations with leaders and I ask what their current company culture is, they automatically go to what they desire their culture to be. And like, that's not happening right now. But yes, we want to talk about what it is. And then those norms and those behaviors. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day and they're like, yeah, our vision and our mission. And I'm like, those are just words. Those are just words. What is your true culture? You have a culture of starting your meetings late. I can't bring a candidate in because they truly believe that you are disrespecting them. Like, they equate being on time that you don't value me because you don't value my time. And so those are the hard conversations we have to have with leaders and like how it shows up. Because what you're saying, your culture doesn't work for everybody. Some people are totally relaxed with time and, it's a suggestion. We're going to give everybody 10 minutes to come in. But somebody like me is like, we didn't start on time. I don't do well in that culture. I do not do well in that culture. And so being able to define what the true culture is for companies and then being able to articulate that to candidates and try to see if they're a good fit. And so do you see this happening in like high performance? Like, what do you do in a situation where it's a highly recruited like management or operations position and they're good on paper and they can talk you through an interview, but you don't think they're a good fit for the culture? How are you handling that situation? And it's and we needed them yesterday, and it's an important hire.
See, and that's the thing is, so you have, when it comes to people who are excellent in their profession but aren't a culture add, it's really a case by case basis. So, is this person already in the organization? How far gone are they? What can we do, to kind of align them or help them? Because a lot of times it's meeting people in the middle. You can't, a lot of business leaders expect their employees, to bend for the business. And it's really a back and forth symbiotic relationship, the business and the employees. It's more like a marriage where, it's not always 50-50, but it's definitely a back and forth. So for hiring that person, you would really, what I would do in this market where it's extremely tough to find the right person, you have somebody who's qualified, but it's evident that they're not a culture ad.
Yeah.
I would really dig in deep to some of these interview questions and some of the interview scenarios to understand what would be a good setting for them.
Okay.
And can you create that in your organization? Because that's kind of what I would also advise for, if you had a current employee, is a lot of times it comes down to personality clashes, or it comes down to, communication problems, or and so it's really just a matter of spending the time reorganizing things, of how people are approached, what the expectations are, how communication works within that team, or that particular person, and making those adjustments. And it also comes down to getting some extra help. So employees are more truthful to third parties. So
Mm,
bringing in a third party, an employee's going to tell them more than they're going to tell your HR manager, or they're going to tell the owner, because they don't want to put their own job in jeopardy.
yeah.
So they're going to be more truthful in a third party setting. And that third party should be more skilled than just asking them, like, what's the problem? They should find out what the problem is through different techniques, right? To where the employee feels comfortable and wants to share with them.
Yeah.
So and finding ways to phrase that, because a lot of people are resistant to the word coaching. They feel like that means that there's something wrong with them. And so, rephrasing it, if you bring in a third party, rephrasing it to be, professional development or professional growth, or, everybody in the organization is doing this. And, having it be more about growing the person than, coaching the person. Or, for the longest time, like, the word therapy was a word that everyone was kind of, off put by,
Mm-hmm.
or embarrassed by. And so they kind of lock up. And so, we kind of had to change around how that word was approached. And, our culture's kind of adapted to that and been more open now, to wellness in the workplace. So, that's what I advise. If you have to have that person, you have to have them today. You can't find anybody else.
Yeah.
Really start to dig deep into what type of scenario can they be a culture ad, and can we make those adjustments or not?
I absolutely love that answer. And the importance of words is important, because I was doing a training, and we're talking about coaching and feedback, and I can't stand the sandwich, like, good, say something good, then bad, and say something bad, because I'm only focusing on the bad. I didn't hear any of the good. And one of the guys at the training was like, yeah, all I know is if I have two more of these conversations, then I need to find a job. So if you are talking to me, I'm looking for another job, because that means you must be getting ready to fire me. And so it was good for the leadership to hear, like, this is how your employees view having a conversation. So there's no trust there, because they already think, if you're talking to me, you must be getting ready to fire me. So how do we find out the root cause? And this is how people, like, interpret those, like, meetings, like, dun dun dun. But we are going to wrap up, but I do want you to give us that one last tip, kind of like how you do for your videos. What is a tip you want us to walk away with before we end this call?
Well, I think having an intentional plan behind how your culture affects your recruiting and how your culture affects your retention, is the key to success. And that's really, that's really what that plan can be extremely complex. So, start small,
Mhm,
do increments, do what you can do. Because I think a lot of people get overwhelmed with
mhm,
trying to implement all these things. And so, just take it piece by piece. And so I love what you said earlier about, culture statements just being a group of words. Because you see a lot of organizations have their culture statement is just like a few words and maybe a sentence behind each one. And people have them memorized. But the problem is that, people define things differently.
mhm,
Like you were talking about time, being on time, and respect. There's a lot of people that wouldn't define respect as being on time,
mhm.
so having your culture statement be extremely in depth and extremely detailed will help you create that plan around what the expectations are and implement that with your interviewing, implementing it with your onboarding, with your processes. I think that's the best first step to really seeing some success in your organization.
And I just want to know, companies out there listening to this call, this interview, it seems daunting, but there's help out there. So you have the wheels out there, you have people first. Contact and get help. You do not have to do this alone. We have experts that will fast track the knowledge and fast track the services. So, again, I just want to thank you again, Will, for spending this 35 minutes talking about everything culture and recruiting. It's so important. Please feel free to research his company. I'll have his business website on the link. We'll have his LinkedIn so you can watch his great content and videos that he makes. I'm telling you guys, it's really good. Just tips for you guys. But you guys enjoy your Thursday. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miracle.